What is up, everybody? Welcome. If anybody's around, please say hi, drop us a comment. Welcome to Elite EDM Stars with myself, Darren Baton, aka Dirty Midranger and DB9 Project. So today, do you want to learn how to make sound effects? Sound effects from scratch using synthesis, things like reverb kicks, alarm sounds, down pitch shifters, alarm kind of bells, white noise crashes and things like that. So that's what we're going to be covering today. So as I say, if you do like the video, please smash the like button, but don't smash it too hard. Be gentle. Okay, so I'm going to switch the screens over and we'll get into the content. And I just want to mention, before we do, I just want to mention about, this is the synthesizer that we're going to be using today. So we're going to be using the Pigment synthesizer to create these sounds with. Fantastic synthesizer. If you want to get a copy of this, and if you want to study with us, you can get a discount on this on their software if you study a set number of hours with us. And just to mention that quickly, we do offer a 10% starter discount for your first session, just by using the code here. It's £45 per hour, but you don't just get one-to-one tuition. We actually create a dedicated learning plan for you and some tests and quizzes and little assignments to do so that you can actually learn more from your one-to-one sessions. But also we're offering a bulk discount as well. So if you are looking to get started, or there's a few things that you just want to iron out and you want to book more than one session, you can get a 30% discount on that. So I just wanted to briefly mention that. And if you come across to our landing page here, which is in the description of the video, this will take you to the landing page where you can find out more information, and the booking system is also available there on the page, and some information about how to get discounts on the Arturia software. So moving on for today's content. Oh, wrong one. So we are going to focus on developing your own house music style sound effects, and that's what we've been covering over the last few weeks, is how to develop your own sort of electronic music house music style, and the kind of sounds that are available, from bass lines to synth pads, Rhodes chords, etc., which we covered last week. So today we are covering sound effects, which are the sonic icing on the production cake. And in this session, as it mentions, I will be producing sound effects and how to covering how to actually make them from scratch. So just a little bit of information, there's not too much, and then we'll get straight into the examples and then straight into the live examples in Ableton Live. So sound effects or effects play a variety of important roles in a house track. They help ease transitions between different sections of a song, taking the traditional part of the drum fill. They supply background interest in the latter sections of a track, particularly during recapitulations and tweak versions of the lead riff. So if you've got something that's repetitive, sound effects help to break that up. And if they're placed in the right places, they just detract away from the lead for a slight duration and then carry on through. And then you've got your lead coming back in as well. So it just helps to fill out certain frequencies, as it mentions here. They are also used to fill up target set frequencies that need additional excitement in the mix. But it's during the breakdown that effects come into their own. Over the past decade, the fairly simple sweeps and dives of old have now become even bigger and more complex, so that they now take center stage in many breakdowns. Whether it's a sidechain white noise riser or a crazy modulated laser fall, effects have an importance today that they've never had before. And they also some of the most important fun sounds to experiment with in your studio. I used to spend years actually just getting a synthesizer, playing around, creating an effect, and I thought, oh, that sounds similar to like something I've heard in a track before, or using an LFO to modulate pitch or whatever. And you just start to build up your own sound effects and sound banks. And before we mention that, before we move on, I'm going to mention that over the next 2 weeks, we're covering this session over the next 2 weeks. So I'm going to be doing these sound effects, and then I'm going to actually be giving the sound effects pack away for you to download for free. And it will be WAV versions and also the Pigment effects bank as well to download as well. Should you want to purchase the bank, you can also have the access to the files and then tweak them yourselves to make your own sound effects from there. So it's all in the synth. A great sounding and versatile synth is a must for making effects. Look for one with plenty of oscillators, filter types and modulation options to give yourself the widest possible palette. Hence, that's why we're using Pigment for today's example, because it has all of those options. It's not just an analog synthesizer, it's got a wavetable, harmonic synthesizer built, a sound engine built in, and also a sample sound engine built in with all types of different noises and different sounds that you can use. And I'm going to show you some later on some of the difference between an analog white noise where there's no discernible pitch. It's sort of atonal. And then you've got white noise. Once it's sampled, you can actually start to pitch that white noise. So get stuck in with automation and fine-tuning to make the effects fit the track perfectly. Use envelopes to shape direction upwards or downwards, and add and bass synth LFO to make the time-based effects fit the groove. So basically, you just want to use the bass sort of low LFO frequency to modulate and in real time and sort of automate over real time to create more tension or to relieve the tension in the sound as well. So get into the habit of also bouncing down any effects you make to build a personal effects library, which I've already sort of just mentioned and touched upon, which you can draw upon in the future to add to your signature sound effects to other tracks. And obviously if you've got the effects patches, then you can tweak them to suit the key of the track as well much more easily. So 5 of the best. They are the white noise riser, which you hear in most tracks. The white noise tends to be carry through a lot of tracks these days, from start to finish almost, and in different sort of tonal shapes with different filtering going on, maybe different bits of reverb, slightly different tonal effect going on in the background. It just depends how you make the effect. These are frequently used to ratchet up pressure approaching the drop, especially if you can take a white noise riser and resample it and then pitch it like I mentioned before, and you can actually make it sort of pitch and move up in time. So pile on the reverb and delays for an even bigger sound, and it sort of washes it out and lets it sit in the mix a lot better. And pump it up with a heavy sidechain compression. As usual, it all depends. You might sometimes want the sidechain to trigger, but not all the time. So you might want it to come in and part of an effect and then drop out. The choice is yours really on how you choose a signature style for placing your effects and controlling them, should I say. So the next one is the bomb. Ideal for entering a breakdown. It's a mighty verb laden explosion to wind down the pressure. The reverse crash, which you hear a lot of, a deep and funky house favorite. This is simply just a reverse crash followed by a normal crash, but you can get funky with it as well. You can make white noise versions of them instead. A nice reverb tail. Use the reverb tails to bring them up, or shorten the tails depending on what you want, and make them short and snappy. Downshift Pitch Drop, another classic for entering the breakdown, featuring a long, gradually descending synth tone and a full mix, made much easier with the new generation of glitch plugins. You've got the different effects glitch plugins you can get, Effectrix, etc., or the glitch blue. I think it's Blues Glitch, which I don't use on here anymore. I used to use a lot on the PC, just to create little fills, as it says there. The technique involves building crazy fills using bounce material from the track. So you're taking a section of the track, chopping it up, and then applying something like an Effectrix or D-Blue Glitch. That's the one, D-Blue Glitch, to across the plugin and the audio, and then just let it make a crazy fill, and then just bounce it down and then add it in. So we're going to move on to walk through first of all of the alarm wind up. So to create an alarm sound, Speeding up is a tried and tested tension supplier for breakdowns and builds. Start with a saw wave. They have enough harmonics to really tear through the mix, and then you draw in a MIDI note covering the length that you want it to play for. So a short one, short snappy burst, or a long 8-16 bar session where you can automate the LFO rate over time, etc. So what you want to do is set the sustain to 100% and release to 0. To make the saw wave pulse like an alarm, assign an LFO to modulate the pitch of the oscillator. The ramp wave LFO is a classic choice for the effect. Here at the moment I've actually got a sine wave, but I have tried different waveforms and we'll go through those in the examples later on. It just depends how smooth you want it, whether you want a sort of sharp pulse of an alarm, or do you want a nice smooth alarm sound. The ramp wave LFO is a classic choice for this effect. Start with a low speed around 1 hertz, or synchronize the speed of the track so that its pulses are in time. So again, you can go freehand with your rate, which I've got there, starting at 1.39 hertz roughly, and then automate that in real time, or you may want to just sync it to beats, where half a bar, quarter of a bar, 1/8, 1/16, and so on. Increase the depth to hear the pitch modulate start working. So you need to obviously increase the depth of your LFO to the modulation. This effect in it, you can see I'm there at about 50%, and you can just adjust to suit. Alarms sound convincing when the pitch spans around 2 octaves, so you want to be able to set your pitch to span that 2 octave range. However, don't limit yourself to this. Any depth settings can be used creatively. And lastly, it's now time to tweak. You can automate a range of parameters to increase tension throughout the build. Try changing the LFO rate, modulation depth, and even even the oscillator's pitch. And add a reverb and delay for depth and space again, as per usual. So the next one, we've got the bomb sound, which is like the reverb sort of kick. The cinematic style impacts effects are created by feeding a kick drum through a reverb unit. It's important to choose a kick with lots of mid and high frequencies to ensure it comes alive when it hits the reverb. Add a compressor if it needs beefing up. Start with an attack time of 1 millisecond, a release of 5 milliseconds, and a ratio of 8:1. Lower the threshold until it thickens up. And again, you've just got to keep on playing it through and adjusting it. So to make the kick even edgier, feed it through a clipper, overdrive, or a distortion effect, and you're looking to boost the mid and high frequencies. So use a filter or a tonal control to hone in on the right. In my case here, I've used an EQ to boost around the 800 to 2 kilohertz range. We'll make it sort of bang a little bit louder, and then boost above that will make the sort of bomb cut through the mix more clearly. So it's all depending how much you want it to come through. Do you want it to just dullen? You might have another impact effect there. You may have a crash. You may have a few different effects all coming through at the same time. So you just have to EQ and adjust the tonal effects really to suit. Number 3, the reverb supplies the explosion, so choose the right type. Halls work the best with long decay times of around 5 to 10 milliseconds. I've tried 2 different reverbs. I tried a plate reverb with hybrid, and then I tried just a standard hall reverb in Ableton Live, which I found was a little bit of a better tone. The plate reverbs were a little bit too sort of digital. If the reverb has a high cut control, open it up so the high frequencies sparkle. Now you can see in my example here, I've got the high cut open, just a little bit of roll off the top frequency, and also my diffusion network as well is important here, and I'll show you that in the live examples. The amount of diffusion network of how much of the high frequencies diffuse in the mix. And again, you're looking to sort of set the wet and dry mix to 50%, and the optimum balance will depend on whether the impact is used on top of the track's regular kick drum or so on. And if it is, you might not want the impact to come in straight away, or if you have any sidechain effects, you may not want the kick. You want the kick to come in and then the sidechain to come in afterwards, and I'll show you that example as well. So make the explosion even louder and thicker by using a limiter plugin after the reverb. Aim for about 2 to 3 decibels of reduction to beef it up and make it cut through the mix or a busy mix. And for added fun, sidechain the reverb tail to a kick drum to give it a full pump factor. And there again, you may want. So in the example I'm going to show you, you don't have the sort of kick drum come on and the sidechain come on the first pump. You sort of let the kick drum and the effect play, open up, and then the sidechain comes in. Oops, I do apologise, guys. I forgot to put these onto the drop of their animation effects. So we'll start with these two anyway. And it should be a walkthrough of Fizzy Sweeps. Fizzy Sweeps or Synth Sweeps is a classic effect that dates back to early days of analog synths. It can be used alongside or in place of a regular crash or a sweep effect and starts off a bar or preempts a drop. Start with a single sine or triangle wave oscillator, oscillator 2 in this example, and draw in a note in the C4 to C5 range that lasts for 1 bar. And then next we are going to use a second sine wave or triangle oscillator to modulate the pitch of the first one. In my examples I'm not doing that. I'm using the FM built-in frequency, which I'll mention in a second. But this is known as frequency modulation or analog FM. So some synths have a mod routing pre-wired, which Pigment does. So I couldn't assign the oscillator 3 to oscillator 2 to create FM modulation. In some synths you can do that. For example, Cypher, you can do that, or Cyclone, I believe it is, in the examples I use in the Sample Magic book. In my example, I have to use a modulation source, which is oscillator 3, and then oscillator 3 is then feeding FM to oscillator 2. And it's pretty much the same setup, really. It's just that you can see in my example there, I've got oscillator 3, which is the source, and the amount has been sent, and I'm sending that to oscillator number 2, which has got FM control. Oscillator number 1 doesn't have FM control. So set the FM depth between 75% and 100 as well. So in there I've got about 75% on the depth. So the tones should sound fizzy and full of high frequencies. To make the sound sweep down, automatically assign a modulation envelope to the pitch of oscillator 1 and set the depth to maximum. So you can see my examples there. I've got the second envelope generator, and that is assigned to the coarse pitch of oscillator 2. And then set the mod envelope attack to minimum, decay between attack to minimum, decay between 75% and 100%, and sustain release to minimum. Again, as you can see in the example of the envelope in envelope 2. And then lastly on this one, the effect can be further twisted to get that radio effect, like a tuning into a radio station. To do this, modulate the pitch of the FM oscillator, oscillator 3, with a sine wave, a sine or a triangle. That's meant to be spelled sign, not sign as in a road sign. I have spell checked this again, but I've just missed a couple of things out, I've noticed. And then set the rate to 0.03 Hertz and depth to maximum. It should sound like it's speeding up and slowing down as it bubbles around the drops. So again, you can automate the rate over in real time, again, to suit the kind of effect that you're looking for. So that is quite complicated in setting up when you first set it up, because you've got to do a lot of different routing of different LFOs and envelopes and stuff. But it's quite simple. If you just follow those examples through, look for a good synth that's got the capabilities of controlling and mapping quite easily. For example, Serum, that can do it quite quickly. It's very similar to this synth I'm using. So moving on to the next one. This is in 2 parts. So this is the Downshift Pitch Drop. And so we start sparkling downward. Synth sweeps are ideal for entering into a breakdown. There are countless variations, but the common element is the pitch drop that goes from high to low. Start by drawing in a MIDI note to cover the desired length that you're looking for, whether it's 2 bars or 8 bars or whatever. We're just using a 2-bar example in this one. Only one oscillator is needed, so select a basic sine wave and turn the others off. And to make the sound fade in and out, set the amp envelope attack to 66%, decay and sustain to 100%, and release to 66%. I forgot to actually put the image example in there, guys. I do apologise. Make the pitch drop by modulating it with an LFO again. But in this case, you've got to do something slightly different. We've got to change the phase. So select a saw wave and make sure that the phase of the waveform starts at the highest point and ramps down in a downwards direction. And to do this, we've just got to move your symmetry, probably your symmetry or your phase, and I'll show you that again in the live examples. Set the note to re-trigger to on to trigger the LFO when the note starts. If you can do that, if you have a note re-trig on, you can do that. And silent, you have a note re-trig, so each oscillator re-triggers at the start at 0 of the waveform and doesn't start halfway through the waveform, which can cause phasing issues with the sound. Great for pads and things like that, but not good for bass lines or sharp effects where you're looking to try and get like a nice bouncing solid tone from that effect. So you need to set the to make it last a whole 8 beats, set the BPM sync so it's set to 8 beats as well. So again, I'm using the rate and I'm using 8 beats on the rate. And then for added excitement, use a second LFO to modulate the pitch of the oscillator. So again, we're using oscillator 1, and then I'm going to use LFO 1 and LFO 2. Use a sine or a triangle LFO with a medium to fast rate and set the depth to around 10%. We only want it to sort of bite into it, really. Don't affect it too much. This will make the sound warble or bubble depending on its speed and the rate that you've got set. Part 2, if you want to emphasize the sensation of a wind down, so obviously you can wind it up, wind it down. You're just going to change the speed of LFO number 2, so it slows down a little over the course of the 8 beats. That should actually say 8 beats. Let me just correct that, guys, please. Not 8 bits. I want to be clear on that. That's supposed to say beat. So experiment with automation and modulation as well for added sonic candy. Add a chorus or a flanger to the effects chain that will expand. Oh, my apologies, I pressed escape. Take your finger away, Darren. Add a chorus or flanger to the effects chain will expand the stereo width and make it the wind down sound a lot smoother and sit better in the mix. You can set the intensity and mix levels fairly high without detracting from the tone of the effect. Try adding more than one modulation effect to increase harmonic richness and adds additional color to the sound. Number 7, we increase the size of the effect by adding a stereo ping pong delay. There is no exact delay time to use, but longer times will make the effect last longer. So start with a quarter or a half note with a medium amount of feedback and work from there. Set the dry-wet ratio to 33%. Shave off any of the low end at around 250 Hertz to avoid muddying the bass. Very important as well, because you don't want the knock of the effect, you just want the delays and the high frequencies. More of the flutter echoes that are coming through. So for extra space, again, add a medium to large hall reverb. Use a decay time of between 2 and 5 seconds, and set the wet-dry mix to between 33% and 50%. Wind down effects are also ideally suited to panning and other stereo spread effects, so experiment with BPM synced auto pan or draw in the panning using automation. So in my examples, I'm obviously using a subtle stereo, panning stereo effect and also the reverb. I've got the high cut on the reverb, Again, my diffusion time as well, just bringing a little bit of natural diffusion, but it's the decay times the most important here. And lastly, for this session, and then next week's session, we'll be covering the other 5 effects. I've got 10 effects to go through, and I'll be covering those other effects. So I'm leaving enough time to go over the raw examples now. We'll just go through the white noise crash. So crash style noise or gas hits can be created using a synth with white noise generator. Drawing a MIDI note with a half beat and set the amp envelope to minimum attack, 50% decay and minimum sustain, and 25% release. And this gives a hard impact transient that gradually fades out. Set a 24 decibel low pass filter and turn the resonance to 33%. This adds a little bit of brightness to the sound. Now gradually lower the cutoff point until the sound cuts through the mix. Roll off any very high-end frequencies, which are around 8 to 12 kilohertz. You don't want it too sharp because white noise bursts can be sort of make the ears bleed if they are too loud in the mix. So you just want to roll off those frequencies, anything from 8 to 12 kilohertz really. This will stop the crash from sounding too sharp and painful on a big sound system. Use a high-pass filter and scoop out around 200 Hz to cut the mud from the low end. Give the noise air by boosting up to 15 decibels from around 4 kilohertz, and this won't affect the high end, which has already been removed. So you can see I'm boosting there, but because I've removed it from the filter on the synth, it won't be affected as much. So all we're kind of doing here is carrying it through, and it will carry the reverb through as well. Give the noise some stereo impact by using a stereo widener again, which is I've done on there. I've just used a little bit of stereo width from a utility plugin. And finally, for more of the warehouse vibe, add a big reverb using a Hall or a Plater logarithm. Get a lush sound by dialing up to 7 seconds of decay with a 35 millisecond pre-delay, and set size between medium and large, and push all modulation and diffusion settings to maximum. Add a compressor and a sidechain, the kick, to make it pump like a smoke machine. So in the next session, guys, I shall be completing this sound effect series, and I'll be covering how to produce crash swells, elevator, white noise, whooshes, minimal verb builds, and full mix effects and dub sirens. So that's next week. So let's get into the examples. Okay, so a couple in this screen and a couple in this screen. So we'll start off with the alarm wind up. Okay, guys, sorry about that. My mic was off. So what we've got here is just coarse tuning from the LFO2, and it's affecting here, and I've only got on about 50%. I don't want the full effect, but I'm just going to show you when I change this the difference of what happens. So again, you can tweak this, you can change the sounds. It doesn't have to be a saw wave. We can change different sounds. We can bring another sound in, make it thicker, fatter. Okay, so that's just demonstrating changing a few of the different waveforms, changing the width, the pulse width of the square wave, which changes your pulse width there. That's just like what's known as pulse width modulation. So you're just changing the tone of the change of the square wave and making it into a slightly different pulse wave. I did mention that it didn't have FM on oscillator one. It does actually. I didn't realise that. I forgot about that. So you can control the FM, but we'll come onto the next sounds. But you can control the FM here, and your modulation source is being controlled from here in the synth. So we can always turn the FM on or off if we wanted to affect any frequency modulation. It doesn't have to be on. We can sync these two oscillators together if we wanted to, but we'll come on to these in the next few examples. So the next one up, or before I move on, I just want to go through. I've got some effects on here, have I? Yes, I've got a reverb and a delay. That's all that's on this one. I'm using the inbuilt effects on here. I've got nothing on the channel at all. I'm just using what's inside. Sometimes I use the effects in the synth if they sound good. Sometimes they don't always fit what I'm looking for, so I will use Ableton's also delays and reverb units, but Pigment is really good. The reverbs sound fantastic. Delays, you've got three rows here. We can put another one here, and we've also got an auxiliary send, just like we've got an auxiliary send on bus sends here, send and return channels on Ableton. We've got a send and return here, so we can assign a reverb. So if we wanted to have, for example, a different effect here and no reverbs, and we still wanted reverb, we can actually stack up 6 different effects and then just send your reverb through the auxiliary here, and it just goes through into the mix like a normal send, which is fantastic. I've never come across a synth that actually does that yet. So moving on to the next one, we've got the bomb sound, and this is a rack up of it using a kick drum and lots of effects. So you can see here I've got a kick. I'm going to take off all of the effects so you can go through everything one by one, and we can actually hear how it's affecting it all. Take the compressor off, everything off, no effects at all. Okay, so I'm going to start bringing the effects in now one by one, and you'll see that what happens and how I've compressed it. I've added some mid-range fattener in there, some kind of distortion, boosting on the EQ around here, adding the reverb, and then sidechaining the reverb. And the reverb is being sidechained from this trigger, but my reverb only carries on here, so I'm missing the first downbeat, but it carries on to the second one as it just sound starts to fade away over time. And then again, that's all depends on the decay time. So let's go into the effects and build it up again. So what I did there, if I wanted to make that tail go out a little bit longer, I've just literally just pushed the decay time from 7 milliseconds up to about 10 to 11 milliseconds, or seconds should I say, of decay time, so that my sidechain kicks in, carries on, but then it just breathes a little bit of relief here. And it just depends how you want to create the effect, really. And then don't forget, if you want to bounce this down to audio, we could just bounce the whole thing down to audio onto another track and create a new sample of it, and then you've got that to keep and build up your own sound banks. But don't forget, guys, I will be giving this pack away. I will be taking all of these sound effects and doing slight different variations of them, maybe, or giving away the audio versions and also the effects pack as well, in terms of Pigment. So if you do own Pigment and you want to use the effects, by all means, that'll be hopefully after the end of next session next week. Then I'll work on creating the pack, and hopefully in the next 2 weeks the pack will be available for you to download. So moving on, we've got the next one. We've got the Fizzy Sweeps. Now I tried to create this in silent first, but it wasn't as good as the one in Pigment. It just hadn't got the same capabilities, and I'll just play you the silent one first, and then we'll play you the next one in Pigment. Okay, so just playing around with the pitch depth and just playing around with the sort of pitch decay time there on that one, but you'll see the difference between this one and a really good for creating really good effects. So we'll just bring up the Pigment. Sorry about the harshness on the ears there. That was very loud when I first played that up. I do apologise about that. But you see the difference between how fizzy that is, because I'm using FM modulation and it's modulating, and you can see all the way it's focusing on the chorus here. So if I click here, you can see that's what's being affected here. LFO1's affecting the chorus, and then there are other things being modulated as well. If you look at the VCA envelope has been modulated there. I think envelope 2 is envelope 2 is controlling the pitch here as well. So there's a few things going on. But if you go back and look at the examples in the actual slides, you'll just walk through and obviously be able to set that up for your own individual synth. So it is going to be different for every synth that you use. You're going to have to look at the capabilities of your synth really to know that you can do and start mapping these things around. I think that's what we've got on there. So VCA1, VCA amplitude, yeah. And if I look at my envelopes, yeah, there we go. Okay, so move on to the next one, onto the downshifter. And again, I've got no effects on this, it's just using internal effects. So on the downshifter, I've got a reverb and a subtle stereo. And let me just come back into the synth. Those are the effects that have been used: a chorus, a phaser, a delay. Could send the reverb if I wanted to through the send there, but I've got a reverb on the actual insert directly here. And it's made up of just the one sine wave, but again, you know, you can change the sound according to how you want it. Really, there's no sort of preferable choice. Let's play the sound for you. Okay, so what I've done in this particular example, rather than coming in and drawing automation across the screen, I've actually put the automation inside the clip. There's no modulation, that's automation. So what we see is we want to look at the modulation, we want to look at our automation lanes, and it's particularly Pigment, and then I've got LFO frequency. And that will then always play any automation in there and automate anything you've got in there. So again, if you want to obviously lengthen this bar out and automate the clip, it just affects this one clip, and then you can obviously then copy that across anywhere of the track. Without it affecting the automation, and without having to think about the automation lanes on this particular page here. So instead of having to come into here and do all the automation here, you just literally assign in the clip, so that everywhere you take the clip, it's got the automation to adjust and make that effective how you want it to do. And that's how you start creating your own unique sound effects over real time. Just automate them and then just come up with all different types of variations to suit your track. Obviously you can put your tone and the start of your note in the key to suit the root of the track. Makes sense as well. So the final one, guys, is for today's session is the white noise crash, and again, just a simple half a beat, just a simple crash, and then we're going to create that with a white noise. But after this, I'm just going to show you a couple of different things in Pigment, in their sample generator, and the difference between the white noise generators, which are really good for creating some unique white noise tonal effects as well. We'll cover that more detail in next week, actually, those effects, but I'm going to show you just the basics of it today, and then we'll cover it again more detail next week as well. But for this example, you just create a little MIDI note. You're looking for a simple oscillator. What we're using here is an analog white noise. Sorry, we're not using any oscillators or any saws. We're just using white noise, the standard white noise oscillator here. We've then pushed EQ up to very high frequencies here, boosted plus 10, nearly 11 decibels, and then a stereo widener on, a Hall effect, and again the sidechain compressor. And I could also put a compressor on if it was quiet in the mix. I could put a compressor on and bring that up as well in the mix as well, and we'll do that in a second, because obviously I'm going to play all of the effects running together, and then you can see how you start building up, you know, your breakdown sections for your track straight away. And obviously if you've got control and tonal control over these effects, your sonic capabilities are just going to expand so much better in your tracks. And every time you're looking for the right effect, you can pull out a synth and actually create that effect, or think, oh, I know I have something that will suit, and I can tweak that, and then off you go. And that's what you're looking for, really, if you want to be unique and create unique tracks, rather than using all the sample packs that are out there from everybody that every sample library sample company creates, and every sample library's got of you know, a load of sound effects. But then eventually they all start to sound the same, because you start to hear them in all the same tracks. So if you can be unique, it's a good thing, really. I mean, I'm not saying I don't use them myself, because I do use sample packs, and I do use them for creativity and ideas. But as much as I can, I try and start everything as original as I can. You know, the samples are great, and they have their place as and when you need them, really. So yeah, coming into that, let's play you the effect. Okay guys, so you can see how you can have so much fun with creating your own sound effects. I'm going to have so much fun actually putting this sample pack together for you guys, really. I'm looking forward to it. And then what we're going to start doing after next week's session, I might just do a session on vocals, some vocal effects, how to create vocal effects, vocal tricks and things like that, and how I go around creating my vocal effects and vocal tricks. And then after that, I think I'm going to start making some tracks from scratch again. and do a few live sessions where we maybe make a track in 1 hour, and start with just like maybe a 4-8 bar loop and build the track up using all the sound effects that we've created from scratch. I think that'd be something really good. Some of the bass tones I've made, or I'll make some new bass tones from scratch, and I'll start building up a sound palette, and I'll start doing that live in a track and whatever. Yeah, so I think that'd be really cool idea to do. So thanks for sticking around for today, and I'm going to head off now, and I'm going to jump onto Facebook, and I'm going to jump onto our Facebook page and just sort of post my weekly update of what we've been up to on the YouTube channel. So that leaves me to say, look, I hope you have a great weekend, and look forward to seeing you all next week. So yeah, enjoy, have fun with your sound effects. Take care, and don't forget to drop any comments or any questions. If you're stuck with anything, I'm more than willing to answer. And again, if you're looking for some one-to-one tuition, jump over to our website where you can get a discount on software if you sign up for a set number of hours with us. Again, you'll have to contact us, and we'll let you know about the information for that. If you want to get a discount on Ableton Live, you would need to be studying at least 20 hours with us on our 20-hour course. We have a 20-hour dedicated one-to-one course where we actually set up a full dedicated learning plan for you. But again, our one-to-one sessions also offer you a dedicated learning plan for that particular session. It's not just a session where you're just going to sit down and we're just going to show you everything. It's whatever you want to get out of it. So whatever you want to learn in that 1 hour session and make the most of, we will set a learning plan to cover and structure as much of the content as we can in that 1 hour session. And again, we are around. We're not, we're not just sort of going to let you go off and say, well, that's it, 1 hour, off you go. We have a forum, we have groups inside the website where you can stick around and you can ask questions, and we will answer those questions for you and give you as much help and guidance as we possibly can. So anyway, guys, I'm going to head off, and I'll see you all soon. So take care. Bye-bye.